The Gut Punch, written by Matthew Hussey. Get the guy. She remembers it like a physical blow, the kind of pain that takes your breath away and leaves you gasping for air. It was as if her heart had been ripped out and stomped on, leaving her feeling hollow and empty. The moment the realization hit her, he was really gone. It wasn't just a fleeting thought or a bad dream. It was her new reality, and it was devastating. It wasn't a dramatic fight or a messy breakup. There were no screaming matches or slammed doors. It was a quiet, almost imperceptible unraveling of what once was. It was the slow, creeping realization that he had simply faded away. Like a shadow at dusk, he became less and less tangible until he was just gone. The calls became less frequent, the texts shorter, more curt. The warmth in his voice was replaced by a cold, distant tone. The sparkle in his eyes when he looked at her, dimmer. The enthusiasm in his touch, gone. It was as if he was there, but not really present. This wasn't just a rough patch, this was the end. He was different. The man she fell in love with had vanished, leaving behind a stranger. He wasn't just any man, he was her everything, the one she thought she would spend the rest of her life with. He was everything she thought she wanted, successful, driven, kind, with a heart that seemed to beat in perfect sync with hers, with a quiet confidence that drew her in. He had a way of making her feel safe, cherished and loved. He had challenged her, inspired her, pushed her to be the best version of herself. He was her rock, her anchor in the stormy seas of life, made her want to be a better version of herself. With him, she felt like she could conquer the world, and she had let him slip away. The regret was a constant companion, a shadow that followed her everywhere. The initial shock was like a wave crashing over her, stealing her breath and leaving her disoriented. It was a pain that was both physical and emotional, stealing her breath and leaving her disoriented. She felt like she was drowning in a sea of sorrow, unable to find her footing. She went through the motions of her life work, errands, social gatherings, but felt strangely detached, like she was watching her life from the outside. Work, errands, social gatherings, but felt strangely detached. Like an actress playing a role she no longer understood. Like an actress playing a role she no longer understood. The world felt muted, the colours less vibrant, the laughter of others a distant echo. The laughter of others a distant echo. She felt like an outsider in her own life, disconnected from the people and things she once loved. How could life go on as normal when her world had been irrevocably tilted on its axis? It was a question that haunted her every waking moment. The answer, she was slowly discovering, was that it did. Life went on, indifferent to her heartbreak. The world kept turning, people kept living their lives. Life went on, indifferent to her heartbreak. And that, perhaps, was the most terrifying realization of all. That the world didn't stop for her pain. And that, perhaps, was the most terrifying realization of all. That life continued even when her heart was breaking. It was a harsh but necessary truth. Living in denial. The first instinct was denial. This couldn't be happening, not to her, not to them. He would call, she told herself. He would realize his mistake, come back, and everything would be like before. She clung to that hope like a lifeline. She checked her phone obsessively, each notification sending a jolt of anticipation through her, only to be met with disappointment. Days turned into weeks, and the silence from him became deafening. Denial slowly gave way to a sickening anxiety that gnawed at her insides. She replayed every conversation, every interaction, searching for the moment it all went wrong. Had she said something? Done something? The self-doubt was a relentless tormentor, whispering poisonous suggestions in her ear. The Pale Imitations. The dating world, once a source of amusement, now felt like a cruel joke. She went on dates, trying to convince herself she was moving on, but every man she met was inevitably compared to him. And they always fell short. They lacked his wit, his charm, the way he could make her feel like she was the only woman in the room. Their jokes were less funny, their stories less captivating, their touch insignificant. It was like trying to replace a masterpiece with a cheap imitation. The colours were wrong, the brushstrokes clumsy, the essence of the original missing. Each failed date was a sharp reminder of what she had lost, a fresh wave of grief washing over her. Drowning in regret. Regret, she discovered, was a bottomless pit. She fell into it head first, drowning in a sea of what-ifs and if-onlys. If only she had been more understanding, more supportive, more worthy. The memories, once a source of comfort, now taunted her, each one a painful reminder of her loss. his laughter, his touch, the way he used to call her name. They echoed in the empty chambers of her heart, a constant ache that refused to fade. She castigated herself for her perceived failings, for the mistakes she made, the opportunities she missed. She had been given a rare gift, a love that most people only dream of, and she had squandered it. The weight of her self-recrimination was suffocating. The urge to reach out, to explain, to beg for another chance was almost unbearable. Her fingers hovered over his name on her phone countless times, the unsent messages piling up in her drafts folder. Pride warred with desperation. What if he rejected her? What if he didn't feel the same way? The thought of his indifference was more terrifying than the pain of not knowing. She imagined him moving on, finding someone else, forgetting about her. The jealousy was a bitter pill to swallow, a constant reminder of her own perceived inadequacy. She had lost him, and with him, a part of herself she feared she might never recover. The day she finally accepted it was over was anticlimactic. There were no tears, no dramatic confrontations, just a quiet realization that settled in her heart. There was no dramatic epiphany, no sudden burst of understanding. It was a slow, creeping awareness that their paths had diverged and there was no going back. It settled upon her gradually, like a fine dust, coating everything in a thin layer of melancholy. Each day, she would wake up and feel a little more distant from the memories they had shared. His social media, once a source of both joy and anxiety, became a distant landscape she observed from afar. She would scroll through his posts, feeling a mix of emotions she couldn't quite name. She saw glimpses of his life without her, the trips, the parties, the new friends. Each image was a reminder of the life they once shared and the new life he was building without her. The achievements, and felt a pang of bittersweet pride. She was proud of him, proud of what he was accomplishing, even if it meant he was moving further away from her. He was thriving, and a small part of her was glad, even if it wasn't with her by his side. She wanted him to be happy, even if it meant she had to find her own happiness elsewhere. The silence from him, once deafening, was now a familiar companion. It was a silence that spoke of acceptance, of understanding, of a new beginning. It spoke of acceptance, of moving on, of a chapter in their lives that had come to a close. She began to pack away the remnants of their shared life, each item a step towards her own future. And in that silence, she finally heard her own voice, small and hesitant at first, but gradually gaining strength. It was a voice that spoke of resilience, of hope, of a new chapter waiting to be written. She was ready to embrace it, to find her own path and to thrive in her own way. The process of healing was slow and arduous. There were days when the grief threatened to consume her, when the weight of her loss felt unbearable, but she learned to sit with the pain, to acknowledge it without letting it define her. She threw herself into her work, her passions, the things that brought her joy. She reconnected with friends, rediscovering the strength of female bonds and the healing power of laughter. She learned to forgive herself, to recognize that everyone makes mistakes, and that holding on to guilt served no purpose. She had loved, she had lost, and in the process, she had discovered a resilience she never knew she possessed. There were moments, fleeting but powerful, when she felt a surge of gratitude for him. He had shown her what it meant to be truly loved, truly cherished. He had pushed her to grow, to evolve, to become a better version of herself. She channeled her grief into a fierce determination to become the woman he always saw in her, the woman she knew she was capable of being. She set goals, embraced new challenges, and refused to let her heartbreak define her future. She would always carry a piece of him in her heart, a bittersweet reminder of a love that had changed her life. But she also knew that her story wasn't over. She had loved, she had lost, and now she was ready to live again, stronger and wiser for the experience. The memory of him would always hold a special place in her heart, a place that time could never erase. It was a memory that lingered like a soft whisper in the wind, always there, always present. A bittersweet ache that would resurface at unexpected moments, catching her off guard. Sometimes it was a gentle reminder of the love they shared. Other times it was a sharp pang of loss that took her breath away. A song on the radio, a familiar scent, or even the sight of a place they once visited together. These small triggers would transport her back to a time when their love was a bright flame, burning with an intensity that seemed it would never fade. A shared joke, a moment of laughter, these memories were like precious gems, each one holding a piece of the happiness they once knew. They were moments that illuminated her life, even in the darkest of times. Their love was a passionate fire, one that scorched and illuminated in equal measure. It was a love that taught her the heights of joy and the depths of sorrow, a love that was as beautiful as it was painful. But the pain would eventually fade, like the setting sun giving way to the calm of night. In its place, a quiet acceptance would settle in, bringing with it a deep sense of gratitude for the love she had experienced. She learned to smile again, to find peace in the memories. The love they shared became a part of her, a source of strength and resilience that she carried with her every day. He had been a catalyst, a turning point in her life. His presence had ignited a transformation within her, one that she would forever be grateful for. He had shown her the depths of her own capacity for love, and in doing so had revealed a strength and resilience she never knew she possessed. She found herself standing at a crossroads, ready to embrace the future with newfound confidence. He had shown her the depths of her own capacity for love, and in doing so had revealed a strength and resilience she never knew she possessed. She found herself standing at a crossroads, ready to embrace the future with newfound confidence. She would carry the lessons she learned from him throughout her life, the importance of vulnerability, the transformative power of forgiveness, and the courage to love fiercely and without reservation. She would carry the lessons she learned from him throughout her life, the importance of vulnerability, the transformative power of forgiveness, and the courage to love fiercely and without reservation. The transformative power of forgiveness and the courage to love fiercely and without reservation. These were the gifts he had given her, gifts that would shape her future in ways she could never have imagined, and the courage to love fiercely and without reservation. She knew that one day, when she was ready, she would open her heart again, this time with a wisdom and a depth that only comes from having loved and lost. And one day, when she was ready, she knew she would love again, this time with a wisdom and a depth that only comes from having loved and lost. She would embrace the future with open arms, ready to create new memories and new moments of joy. She knew she would love again, this time with a wisdom and a depth that only comes from having loved and lost. She would embrace the future with open arms, ready to create new memories and new moments of joy, this time with a wisdom and a depth that only comes from having loved and lost. She would embrace the future with open arms, ready to create new memories and new moments of joy. And in those moments she would